Elizabeth Sparkle was a gymnastics coach on a television show. Her name was very famous at that time. This show was very popular with the audience. Elizabeth was indeed beautiful and her body was very sexy. As usual, after the show on television, she was going to the dressing room. When she passed other people, they wished her a happy birthday. She was now 50 years old. The changing room in the women's area was under repair. Elizabeth went to the men's changing room and went straight into the toilet. It turned out that the one who came in was her boss. In a conversation on his cell phone, Elizabeth heard that the television boss wanted a young woman to fill the gymnastics show. Not a woman in her 50s. When her boss came out, Elizabeth saw her face in the mirror, which was indeed starting to age. Naturally, she should have resigned from the show and was replaced by someone younger. But the problem was that Elizabeth felt reluctant to do that condition. She was disappointed and hurt. Shouldn't she have thought about other jobs besides filling the television show, considering that she was already 50? Elizabeth was determined to go to the promised serum place. She wrote down the address on her hand. Elizabeth was confused because the address in question was quiet, not a clean place, and also creepy. Under the stairs. When Elizabeth took out her card and attached it to the sensor, the door only opened halfway. Elizabeth bent down to get in. Why wasn't Elizabeth afraid of such conditions? She could have been raped or murdered. It almost didn't make sense. But Elizabeth arrived in a room that was larger and cleaner. She saw her number 503 and attached it to the sensor, and it immediately opened. Elizabeth took the box to her apartment. When she opened it, there was a stabilizer and activator for single use. Does that mean she will inject herself? Who is responsible if something happens to her? There is no supervision from a doctor or nurse. It almost doesn't make sense. Despite all the information that's revealed about the substance, including the detailed process needed to make it work, Elizabeth never learns anything about the people behind the business. This includes those responsible for supplying the chemicals throughout the city, alongside the person who came up with the idea in the first place. Whoever created the substance is notably absent from the story, and while this is almost certainly done to allow the audience to focus on Elizabeth's journey, it's information that could definitely have enhanced the film. However, keeping the supplier's identity secret is a great way of giving the substance an extra layer of mystery. It prevents the audience from blaming any specific individual for the events of the film, forcing them instead to examine Fargit's themes and how they promote the film's ideology. There's no clear villain of the story, which means audiences have to search deeper and think critically to develop their own stance on the narrative. It's a clever way of forcing audiences to engage with the work by withholding certain details that aren't strictly necessary. One small detail that doesn't play a major role in the substance, but still raises fascinating questions, is the extra activator fluid that Elizabeth is given when she first accepts the substance. While everything else is carefully measured and split into perfect amounts, the activator fluid is excessive and she doesn't need it all. This was clearly an intentional choice, but it's not immediately clear how it serves the film. It's something that could easily be missed upon a first watch, but it subtly suggests something about the mysterious agency. The extra activator fluid could serve one of two purposes. Firstly, it could prove that the agency behind the substance is fallible and capable of making mistakes. By proving this early in the film with the miscalculated liquids, the substance drops a small Easter egg that immediately distorts the audience's trust in the company. Secondly, the extra fluid could be a subtle suggestion that what's to come, Sue using the activator liquid on herself, has happened before, and the company is aware of this danger. This once again paints the company as corrupt and untrustworthy. This question is largely speculative, but there are some details throughout the film that suggest the substance's ending may have happened before. The extra activator serum is the first clue, but the biggest contributor to this theory can be found in Elizabeth's phone conversations with the call representative. They don't seem particularly surprised to hear the main character's problems, but rather annoyed that she didn't follow the instructions. It's possible that they encountered these side effects in testing, but his tone suggests an annoyance that he's suspiciously familiar with. Additionally, one of the substance's main themes is the universal experience of wanting to look younger and more attractive. It would slightly go against the film's central tenet if Elizabeth was the first client to break the guidelines and spend more time as her perfect self. Instead, the story can be viewed as a kind of modern-day fairy tale where Elizabeth represents the whole of humanity and her actions serve as a warning against this kind of behavior. The film is extremely allegorical at times, so this reading makes a lot of sense. In the final moments of The Substance, after Elizabeth and Sue have merged into a mutated version of them both and wreaked havoc at the New Year's Eve party, Elizabeth's face appears in what remains of the creature. Since the character died just a few minutes earlier, this moment comes as a huge surprise and builds upon what's already a hugely brash and ambitious ending. However, the emotional weight of this colorful finale manages to pull everything together, as Elizabeth's storyline concludes in the most fitting and depressing way imaginable. The celebrity's face appears in the creature's remains as a final statement that she's been irrevocably destroyed by her own selfishness, torn to pieces by the beauty standards and self-competition that's been slowly eating away at her throughout the film. Despite Sue's prominence in the final act, the emergence of Elizabeth's face cements her as the film's true protagonist. It's her actions that The Substance is warning against, and her tragic fate that audiences will be left with long after the credits roll. Shoot the monster!